So here's how I hire. I focus first on culture, not skill. Now that doesn't mean I just take anybody, applying for a role with our company and go, well, you're a great culture person, so we'll just fit you in. That doesn't necessarily mean that. What it means though is if I have a skill position open, what I'm going to look at is how this person is culturally, what their DNA is like, how they process information. Sometimes I'll take them to a coffee shop so that they can open up and just be real with me. I remember doing that with a guy I wasn't sure. He was kind of on the fence with me. He had the skill, but after taking him to the coffee shop, it was clear to me that he was not a culture fit for our team. And so understanding what your culture is key to hiring the right people. Where do you get culture from? Culture really comes from you, again, as the leader, and having a clear understanding of what your DNA is. Take time to evaluate, what are my core values? And what are the core values I want in my business? I call this the difference between a personal DNA and a business DNA. The business DNA is what really rolls forth how the business will make decisions, the types of people it will have, the types of clients you serve. All of those things are rooted from you and from how your personality is. Now, over time, that may change. Over time, your business DNA could shift, but really there's always that crux. Perfect example, Disney. If you look at Disney Studios and Disney, the parks and all of those things, what they will always tell you is that it all began with a mouse. And that mouse, Mickey Mouse, was actually a byproduct of Walt Disney himself, meaning that Mickey Mouse was sort of a Walt's, you could say alter ego, but really it was who Walt was. And so Mickey became sort of that center, that defining piece for the organization. Now, does that mean that as Walt passed away and new generations of leaders have come in, that things haven't changed? No, of course. I mean, that happens. But what they aim to do as an organization is it always comes back to the mouse. Kind of a what would the mouse do? Playing on the old what would Jesus do kind of movement, right? So it's like, what would Mark do? Or what would John do? Or what would this leader do? And we're going to put that in the business. We need to install that. The other thing is that experience, in my opinion, only trumps teachability like never. Like it never does. Like I don't care how experienced you are. I don't care how great you are at what you do. If you're not teachable, I am not hiring you. I've seen this way too many times, and I've hired people that I was like, wow, they're really experienced and they've got all this knowledge. But then when push came to shove and they weren't teachable, they ain't growing. And so look, if you've got people on your team that are not teachable, that are not willing to grow, guess what happens to your organization? It ain't growing. Because your ability to grow, your capacity for growth is based upon the team that you've put around you and in you. So if you as a person are not willing to grow, you're probably not going to hire people that are willing to grow. You're not hiring teachable people. Therefore, your business is going to be stuck. Maybe your revenue grows, but as a team, you're always making the same mistakes. You're always having the same issues with clients. You're always getting the same crappy clients because you're not willing to grow. You're not willing to change what Carolyn Dweck talks about in the book Mindset, having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. Essentially, the fixed mindset says, this is as high of a skill as we can go. We can't develop beyond that. Where growth mindset says, this is just the beginning. This is sort of the floor of our ability to grow. So it's the beginning point, not the end point. So when you look at who you're hiring, you want to make sure that you have people like that. You can hack your way to growth with experience, but that doesn't mean it's the best option for you and your company. If you need fast growth to capitalize on a market opportunity, hire for experience, but in my opinion, it's rare. So like if you feel like I've got to capitalize, I need experienced people right now, fine, do that, but make sure they're teachable as much as possible. So in this, again, I'm not saying that you just go out and just find teachable people with no experience. What I'm saying is I would always take somebody who's teachable over somebody with experience in most cases. In some cases, you can do do it, but a lot of times it can bite you if they're not teachable. Another thing is hiring your leadership team. And this is kind of the last area I'll talk about. Core leader depend on you as the CEO. So if you're the CEO of the company, you really have to, again, understand your DNA. You have to understand how you make decisions. You have to understand what drives you, what makes you tick, what you're passionate about. The more clearly you can understand that, the more clearly you can understand your strengths and weaknesses. The more clearly you understand your weaknesses, you start to realize, okay, if we're going to have a functional team that doesn't just care about people, but also make sales, then I've got to have people on my team that are going to help bring me up to that reality. So for example, I'm more of a marketer. I'm not as great at the operations side. So I've had to make sure that I put people in my team that are way more organized, that are way more detailed, that are way more introverted in their thinking and processing, better at follow through than I am, better at details than I am, because they thrive off those things. I don't. I'm more the inspirational, motivational leader. I'm much more thriving on people and developing people. So I care about those things. So I have other people in my company that are better at the actual stuff, if you will. So you have to ask yourself, what kind of CEO am I?